happens, and you're like checking whatever it was that was apparently so urgent that everyone needed to contact you at one time, and it's all like 50 people sending me the same reel. You know what I mean? I'm like, come on. But so we're gonna get started with the interview in a second. I just wanted to, if you have any questions about the subject matter, I wanted to answer any questions you might have, and then I'll kind of give you a rundown of what I'll be doing with this information and everything like that.
Okay, well, we can go with the rundown that you have because I don't
Okay.
have any specific questions.
Okay. So essentially what I'll be asking you about is just places or spaces in your life where you feel like you can't show up 100% like yourself. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
any space or in like place where you feel arrested in like the way that you are able to communicate, the way that you're able to show up, anywhere where you just feel like kind of, like you can't just be you. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I'll kind of, ask questions that kind of get you to the space, but I want to encourage you to speak as much as you would like and as freely as you would like. So if you want to curse, if you want to say something that, may be unpopular or whatever, feel free. This is a space where you can express yourself completely.
Oh, okay.
Okay? And so what I'll be
Sounds good.
with the transcription of the interview. So I'll be taking this interview and transcribing it, and then I'm going to take what we talk about and paint it onto a piece.
Mm.
And all of the pieces will be a part of an exhibit that'll live in a museum in Miami for Art Basel.
Oh, cool. Cool, cool.
Thank you. So it'll actually be in this kind of like the museum is a historic police museum. So
Hmm.
it'll be in a actual courtroom, which is kind of like a place where people are arrested.
Arrested.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a play on, a play on the idea or the concept.
I
Um,
love it.
yeah, so that's what will happen with everything once it's all said and done. So you're actually this is the last day of the interview, so you're one of the Mohicans.
Okay.
The interview. And then I begin the creation process actually tomorrow. So I'm super excited about that. But if you're ready, we can go ahead and get into it.
All right, let's go.
Okay. So the first question is kind of just a general question that I ask everyone. When do you feel you're most powerful?
When do I feel I am most powerful? I, I feel that I'm most powerful when I'm able to be myself
Hmm.
and when I'm a part of or within a space that is safe and conducive to being myself. And so there are many layers to me, but it's very simple in terms of uh, how the layers surface, if they or come alive, whatever. It's all contingent simply upon being safe,
Hmm.
uh, or just in um, a certain environment or energy. And so I ultimately, again, walk around as myself or, live, breathe as myself. But oftentimes, um, you find there are like different societal differences, some physical, some just like rooted in maybe, let's just say, culture or um, depending on what group or entity that may be involved. So it's something, some things are unseen, some things are seen.
Hmm.
And I'll go and say that I like to be comfortable. And so when I mean comfortable, it's temperature, it's feeling. Um, I'm pretty much, I am going to be me regardless,
Hmm.
but how that shows up, how it resonates, that all depends on the space. So, for instance, I prefer and do well in warmer climates and warmer environments. And so, like cold, wet, all of that, it aches and pains my body.
Mm,
It locks up. I deal with a lot of numbness, so on and so forth. So, when I mean about like being comfortable, if the temperature is off, so to
mm,
speak, that determines how I show up. Because if like right now, I'm lying in my hammock because my body feels like, I think I told you, a bus hit me. And so I deal with chronic pain and like nerve damage. I have a concussion and like TBI issues and vertigo. So it's like I'm navigating a whole bunch, but
yeah.
I make sure that I'm constantly grounding, belly breathing, so on and so forth.
Mhm.
Um, Now there's another thing. So there's like back to those layers I spoke on. I'm also very free, and I love to be free, which is why, doing this interview, stuck out because it's like, oh, liberation, freedom. I don't like restrictions and to be arrested or to, feel that way. Um, and there's another layer in that I am or subscribe to, identify with, support, whatever the word is, but nudism and like I'm a naturist. And so I prefer and I'm super comfortable with, connecting with nature, being one with nature, but also being in my natural state.
Mm,
And so I know that that's, I generally don't start there, but I can land there,
mhm.
within our society. And, people have to almost be receptive or give permission to be, you know, to allow nudism or like the naturist um, type things. And to me, it's like, well, that's already faulty because I don't need your permission
Mhm.
and to be free or to be in my natural state. And
Mm,
I think that's where our society starts with the misunderstanding, and with this like false arrests and
mm.
like you know bounding, because it's like,
Yeah.
why do I have to, if I just said I'm comfortable, why do I have to clothe myself because you're uncomfortable? And it's like, at what point can I be me? And like, why do I have to be shackled? And so maybe you make me feel uncomfortable, but I didn't express it, or it doesn't matter, or
Yeah.
maybe I don't think like that, but it's like, so why should I have to walk around in handcuffs because someone else needs to feel comfortable, or and it's like, well, wh- if I'm over here minding my business, why does it matter, what I'm doing or how I look? It has nothing to do with you, And so it's like you're constantly judged, sometimes ridiculed, mocked, dismissed because it's a time and a place for everything, right? And so depending on the environment, the space, you can't be yourself, so you feel restricted, or I should say, I feel arrested because it's like, well, I don't want to have this on. This is restricting. This is this. This is that. This is
Right.
that. And it's like, well, I don't. I just said freedom, liberation, and
Yeah.
everything that you're giving me is something that's another handcuff or a shackle. And it's like,
Mhm.
well,
Let
what are
me,
we doing here?
may I ask, do you think that part of what makes people uncomfortable with other people's nudity is maybe their relationship or the connotation that most people are usually only nude when it comes to like sex or a sexual connotation?
Yes, I believe it's a lot of misrepresentation of nudity.
Hmm.
Like I feel that, or just based on my experience, like in my household, it was taboo.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you know, my foundation is rooted in like openness and supportiveness as it relates to um self-awareness, confidence, esteem, and so many things that I found and that I find that many people struggle with within our society. And when I look and reflect onto my life and my lifestyle, it's like, well, those aren't areas that I necessarily struggled with or even ever had issues with because my foundations it didn't align with my foundations, my teachings, or what the things that I accepted in my life. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like, well, I didn't think it's weird to see, a naked body because I wasn't shamed from have like, if I didn't have my, if I were in my natural state, or like say if like a parent or another relative or someone was nude, it wasn't like a woo type of deal because it's just like, well, that's normal. So I didn't really have like an immature response to nudity like you
Yeah.
know others because it's like, well, I didn't learn it like you learned it, you or not you, but
Yeah.
like
No, we
I
were very
didn't.
much like in my house growing up, we were a pants on in common spaces house. Like no one
Right.
ever was completely nude or naked in any common area of the house. And even if like you were in a common area and you like it wasn't even underwear, like you had to have pants on. Like we were very
Uh-huh.
like pants on decency home at all times.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so it's like, and I went into spaces that were like that, and even for instance, like I remember, so I always like had robes and stuff like that. And there would be times where, okay, maybe if now there's an unexpected guest, so it's like, oh, let me go put my robe on, and then, whatever, or even if it wasn't like full nudity, but it's like, oh, let me still cover or, you know, conform to this thing because, again, who's the get, what's the guest, all the stuff around it.
Right.
And then, but it's like, but if we don't put certain things in play, then we don't have to do all this work or this guessing or preparation or presentation because it's like, why am I doing this for you? Like, tell me why, if in fact it was fine until you became a part of the equation, like, why are you coming to my house? But, and, like this is just a hypothetical, but it's like, why are you coming to my house if I have to be how you want me to be? I'm not coming to your house,
Right.
And so, and I get it, like that within people's houses, like, the rules or the social contract of your house. And so I get that too. So, but it's like, in mine, I had safe spaces where it's like, well, in your room, you can do what you want. In the bathroom, you can, or over here or there or blah, 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 blah. So it's just like knowing the lay of the land, so to speak.
Right.
But also being supported in that, hey, there's actually nothing wrong with what's going on. And in or like for instance, nudity and like without sexualizing nudity. Um like that I think was a lesson that was actually instilled with uh early on so I could differentiate the two, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't see them, because it's like, well, if we're gonna go off of nudity equates to sex, well then what about like provocative dress or expression? So it's like, well, why is that still sexualized? And and it's just like people will sensationalize and sexualize anything. So let's promote or live up to certain things like hey, no, when I'm doing this, that it doesn't involve this or it doesn't entail this,
Right.
and that's fine. Like let's because I think when we shy away from things or we don't properly educate, the misinformation and the miscommunication breeds further damnation, and ridicule and misunderstandings like, oh, if I'm nude, that means touch me. No, it doesn't.
Right.
Because again, it's still bad, like it's inappropriate because you don't just help yourself to anything, so it's like, well, how do we teach that and engage and so on and so forth, and it's like it's by doing it and like living it, as opposed to being like, nope, people can't handle it, so we just won't address it, because
Right.
it's like, well, that's dangerous because they never learn.
Exactly.
And then if you don't see it, experience it, of course you'll keep thinking it's taboo, but it's like we know like someone can be fully clothed and raped or sexually assaulted or touched, so it's like, it kind of like living the truth gives light to more, because again, people will think, well, I had on all these clothes, so why did they rape me, or why did they touch me, why did they lead me on, why did they do all these things, and it's like, because you don't have to be nude in order for someone to sexualize or, you know,
Hmm.
fetishize something, and I think that's part of the challenge when you try to avoid things or restrict them. When you restrict them and try to incubate them, I think it it sways a lot as far as it relates to like acceptance and real awareness.
Yeah, because definitely, specifically speaking about the action of rape or something, it goes beyond, in my opinion, what we see on surface. You know what I mean? Usually that's
Hmm.
more intentional, meaning like
Hmm.
this person is intending to harm you versus, what you're wearing or how you're showing up in a space. It's usually a targeted act where like this person picked you out for whatever their reason is, and they're
Right.
acting on that impulse.
Right. Exactly. Because otherwise you have people thinking, well, I'm at fault.
Yeah. Hmm.
I'm at fault for someone violating me,
Right.
and it's like, no, that's part of the trauma. And you're healing, like, or lack thereof, because you're trying to find fault in yourself. And it's like, you were just the chosen one. It's fine. So
Hmm.
whether or not you dress a nun can be, it's like when you start seeing it that way and you're like, no, they're you were chosen, like you said, or you were targeted. And we can have other conversations. Life looks different, instead of people walking around paranoid and all these other things, or just blaming themselves with, and when it's like, it's not you. You're not that powerful. They had nothing.
Hello.
Whoops.
Can you hear me?
Whoa, wait a minute.
Hello. Are you there? Can you hear me? Hello. There we go. I was scared because when I had paused the recording when like we started going in and out, and
Mhm.
it kind of just like shut down. So I'm like, oh no, did it not save it? But it did save it. So what we had
Oh, perfect.
for has been recorded. So we're good on that front.
Perfect.
But we can kind of switch gears a little bit. So
Okay.
we can talk about when, and you kind of touched on this a little bit before, but I would like for you to elaborate a little bit on when you feel your least powerful.
Okay. So I feel my least powerful when I'm um, discouraged from being authentic.
Mm,
Um, so how that may look, it may be an environment where I I am not supported in sharing my feelings,
mm,
opinions, or experience. Um, Also, if I have to tiptoe and exercise a great length of caution to avoid whatever, um, that that's one of those spaces or places. Um, because I almost feel like it's not accepting of me or inviting of me. So it's like I really, if I have to melt or reduce or shrink myself to be here, I'm not supposed to be here.
mhm.
Um, so it's basically having an invitation, but come in and don't touch.
Right. Do you have an example of kind of like what that looks like? Hello? Yeah, that's okay. So, we were talking about when you feel you're least powerful, and like you were giving me an example of like what it looks like when you're in that position.
Oh, okay. So basically being told, hey, you're invited or you can come, just don't participate. Don't be yourself. Don't share. Don't open your mouth. Don't breathe
Mm,
unless we say you can.
mm,
Those are environments that um, I avoid or don't feel powerful because you're asking me, hey, turn off yourself or turn off parts of you. And so to me, you don't want me there. So I'm not powerful in those moments.
right. And when you feel that way or you're faced with those kind of situations, what are some of the processes or the practices that you put into place to get yourself back to a position of power?
Well, I maintain my power by not placing myself in situations or environments that uh, receptive to me. And
Mm,
so I never lose it because I don't, try to convince or force or put myself there. It's like, no, not a good fit, and it's not a good fit because to me, you're asking me. Now, I never once submitted to it and said, hey, let me turn myself off or let me, change me.
right.
So that's why I maintain the power because it's like, yeah, you ask or, insinuate that I should or could, but I'm actually maintaining the power by saying no. In fact, I'm just gonna continue to do what I'm doing or, stay over here, but I'm not gonna go over there. And you don't have you don't you won't hear from me. Or like it's I'm not
Yeah,
gonna try to beat down the door to get in. You don't accept or want me, so it's fine.
right.
Yeah. Um and so
Okay,
that's just really a way to maintain it is by not submitting or submerging myself into it.
got it. So if you could give, now this could be a piece of advice to yourself, maybe your past self, or to someone else who is dealing with the feeling of being arrested, and it can be in a way similar to what you expressed, or just in general. What kind of advice would you give them to help them get out of that space?
You are is you're only as free as your mind. And being free goes beyond the physical. Um, and that's what ties into your mind. But when you free your mind, you free yourself.
Right.
And so allow yourself to determine your fate, to determine what is and what's not for you. And then again, maintaining the balance by keeping your mind clear. Um, and I think how that happens is not being thrown off. And as a person who's constantly like intentional about like maintaining balance because of my vertigo, I I do this, you know, 25 hours out of the day, because I have to check in with my mind at all times to make sure, okay, are my feet on the ground? Like, agreement right now. Oh, okay, my body's saying no, my mind's saying yes. So, mind, let's be mindful of my body because if I can't move my leg, I can't move my leg. And I don't want to trick myself into thinking I can and I can't. So, making sure that mind is free, by checking in with yourself to say what's going on. And that's with every beat of life. Like, what's going on? What's happening here? What am I doing? And if, there's nothing like concerning or alarming going on, but a check-in is still necessary. And that's how I feel that you maintain your mind better when you're constantly in tune with it and not allowing outside or external factors to derail you.
Hmm.
Yep. And so I just think that I maintain my freedom even when, oh, this is another important part. Things won't always go as you would like them to. And even if like viable solutions, sometimes they are not brought into play for one reason or another. And you have to learn to accept that. But you can always maintain your freedom by keeping your mind in congruence with you and yourself. Because again, I might be in an environment where I have to wear um, layers of clothing,
Right.
and so like in winter, if you're like, hey, come to this place, you may see me in layers of clothing. And that's because now I'm having balance of my temperature being regulated as
Right.
opposed to, you know what I mean? So it's like, well, I don't feel as restricted because, I'm not freezing, so and that's being in tune with your mind and like, hey, is this necessary? Is this a battle for me to fight? Is this worth, So all of that goes into checking in with yourself because it's like, well, in theory, yes, I don't like the clothing, but I love this wool right now
Yeah.
because I am warm and I need it.
Right.
And until, we can regulate the temperature another way,
Hmm.
now if I come inside and it's 100 degrees, now I need to take all of this off.
Idiot.
Um, but yeah, just being open and flexible with yourself.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me today throughout our
No
technical
problem.
difficulties. And as
Mhm.
things progress, I'll make sure to keep you in the loop. I'll be sharing photos and charting the whole process. And I believe that on the 7th, which is the day of the opening of the exhibit, I believe we're doing like an artist talk, and I think it will be streamed. So I'll make sure I get
Oh, okay.
information on that. So even if it's not, you'll be able to see like the exhibit in its fullness and everything like that.
Cool. Question for you. What are the Art Basel dates this year?
So I believe it starts because I know it's usually the first 2 weeks of December.
Hmm.
So I know as far as the events that I'll be involved in, they'll start on the 5th. That's the day I get there. So
Okay.
I get there on the 5th. There's a reception that I'm going to for the Black Collectors. I forget the name of it. I think it's called the Black Collectors Gallery. So
Hmm.
I went to their reception on the 5th. We put together my exhibition on the 6th. Then the opening is the 7th. And I know that I want to say the last day for most events is the 10th.
Gotcha. Okay, so 5th through 10th or roughly.
Yeah, so I want, or but I do think some things are going to start. I've seen things starting as early as the 2nd.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I don't know the full schedule. I just know the schedule of what I'm doing while I'm there,
Hmm.
and that's
Makes sense.
from the 5th until the 10th. So I know
Gotcha.
we're also saying it was harder to get flights out on the 10th because everyone's leaving that day. So that's why
Hmm.
I'll be getting back here on the 11th, actually.
Gotcha.
So
I
yeah.
actually just came, I was in Miami. Um, what was it, last month? I guess it's last month now because this is November.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep, I was just there for a week. I guess that was the last week of no October, maybe,
So for
something
like
like that.
Halloween.
Yeah, I left right before Halloween
Oh,
because
okay.
I was in for Halloween. I was actually in Atlanta because
Uh,
I left Miami and went to Atlanta.
for like a homecoming.
I did, but I was gone for like about a month.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, homecoming was in between the time, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm not really. Hold on. Let me stop recording before I say this.